Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 36 of Petey's Awesome Guest Panel. Now, before I introduce my guest at this time, let me introduce my special guest co-host, Gary Mike enthusiast, and my friend, Christopher Petey. Welcome, sir.
Hey, how's it going?
Now, my guest at this time is a very, one-of-a-kind man. He's a writer, producer. He's worked for many different companies. He's worked for Paramount. He's worked for Disney. He is the co-creator of Mad TV. He is the co-creator of one of my favorite shows, Gary and Mike. He is definitely a legend and definitely a true legend, and he works for the Will Vinton company. And my guest at this time is Mr. Adam Smalls. Mr. Adams, how are you today, sir?
I'm good, thank you.
It's such a pleasure to have you. Now, before we get into our Gary and Mike questions, though, I do have a question. Though. It's a typical cliche question, but I just want to ask, though, and that is, how did you get your first start in producing, writing, and animation?
My first break was I was a staff writer for the sketch show In Living Color. And I started working for them in their second year and co-created a character called Fire Marshal Bill with Jim Carrey, which was a real treat.
Oh, very cool. Now, Christopher, you have a couple of questions too for Mr. Small. What would you like to ask Mr. Small?
Well, I definitely remember In Living Color from back in the day, because, hell, I'm that old enough. And yeah, I'd just like to know, Adam, what are some of your memories working on that show?
It was scary because we were only given a 13-week contract. So if you didn't cut it, you were out. And I didn't know if they would trust a white guy to work on a African-American show. But they did, and they let me make fun of anybody and anything, and it was a really freed up, great atmosphere. But those first 13 weeks was really scary, trying to hang on and make sure I got picked up, stay on the show.
The slightly less politically correct times of the 90s.
Yep, I don't think I would get that job now, or that show would be on now.
Very cool. And Mr. Small, I definitely want to get your memories on working on this film because it's one of my favorite films. I thought it was Film of the Year for 2003, and that is Malibu's Most Wanted.
Yep, Jamie Kennedy. So we created the Jamie Kennedy experiment, and he played a bunch of different characters, and we did pranks on unsuspecting people. And one of the characters he did was Brad Gluckman. And it was off of that character that he wanted to pitch a movie. And so there was an existing old script that was going to have to be rewritten, but we pitched it in like March, and in July we started shooting it. So it was an amazing experience. Great cast, great movie, really funny.
Ah, very cool. Chris?
Although I can tell you the ending, the original ending, if you're a fan of the movie, the ending is he helps his dad become governor of California. But in our original ending is he ends up destroying his campaign, and the dad doesn't become governor because Brad is such a bad rapper. But they didn't think that was uplifting enough. The audience wanted a smiley face as opposed to a frowny face.
You got to have it happy ending, right?
Guess leave that up to Will Ferrell, huh?
Yeah.
Chris?
So yeah, my next question was going to be, Adam, and what were some of your memories working on Mad TV? Because sure enough, like In Living Color, I'm a fan of variety shows.
Well, it was that was another very difficult first 2 years. We had a director who wanted to run a sketch show. He was a brilliant director, and that's why we hired him to do the special. And he was director for the first 2 years, but he turned the cast against us and tried to get us fired. So for the first 2 years, we were just kind of hanging on, hoping we would get through it. And then after the second year, we realized that we had the confidence and the chops to run the show. So the director didn't come back, 4 of the cast members didn't come back, and that's when we hired Alex Borstein and Will Sasso, and from then on it just took off and was on the air for 14 years.
Very cool.
Resounding success.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Awesome. And I do want to get your opinion, sir, on because you were part of the production of Bad Grandpa, and I wanted to get your opinion on working on the 2013 movie, The Jackass Presents Bad Grandpa.
Yeah, we never went out on the shoots. Basically, Johnny had us in to, we pitched the story with them to Paramount to get the movie greenlit. And then we would have story meetings and pitch bits. But we saw an edit of it, but we were never on set for any of the live pranks. But it was an amazing experience, and it was very cool to work with them.
Very cool. Now, we have myself and Chris and I were big, huge fans of Gary and Mike growing up. 2001. Before we get into the Gary and Mike questions, sir, let me just say thank you so much for giving us an alternative to watch on UPN. Growing up in the early 2000s when we had WWF SmackDown at the time, and then we needed there was another show that kept my interest, and that was Gary and Mike. And I still to this day I actually have my father and my sisters and I were huge fans of Gary and Mike. We would actually watch it religiously every Thursday night right after SmackDown. And there were so many great memories of that. I actually have some of it actually recorded on my old VHS tapes.
With the exception of Springer.
With the exception of Springer. I still have some of the original episodes. I mean, I have the Springer one, but the Comedy Central version. And Christopher, as a longtime fan like me, do you have any, my questions you like to ask Mr. Small?
Well, I mean, we both talked about it before through a Facebook Messenger, but I was kind of wondering about right now if you have some idea of what how season 2 would have gone, some of the plot ideas, if you can recall right now at this point.
I can't remember the episodes. I can't remember what we had in store. I think we'd written 3 stories, but I don't remember them. I really don't. I'm sorry. I wish I did.
I see. Did you have a favorite and least favorite episode you wrote or produced, Gary and Mike?
We liked the corn dog one a lot. Basically doing your Rocky kind of story, but with corn dog Olympics in there. That was a lot of fun, and we liked the first one.
And you had Stu Nahan on there too, as well.
Say again?
And you had Stu Nahan on there too to top it off.
Yeah, yep. But the original was live action. It was called Lewis and Clark, and it was just 2 kids, and it was going to be live action. Then we realized it was going to cost $1 billion to go to a different town every week and do a new episode. So on Mad TV, we had worked with an animator, a claymator, on some of our sketches on the show. So we said, why not animate it? It'll be a lot cheaper. And he was not up to doing a series. He just was not capable of being able to run a show. So
yeah, that was the Corky Quackenbush version, wasn't it?
Yep. He was great with 5-minute sketches, not so great with 22-minute episodes.
And Christopher, before you ask your question, let me just say that you just mentioned the episode Corn Ugly Dog. That was a great episode, and it was one of those episodes where you had an all-star guest cast. You had Stacy Keach playing Pops. You had the Bare Naked Ladies. You had Chick Hearns as the corn dog announcer in the tournament. You had Tim Curry, I believe, that did the voice of, what was his name, Christopher? Weston?
He was
in Crisscross though, but I don't think he was in Corn Ugly.
He wasn't? Okay.
And it was Stu Nahan, not Chick Hearn.
Oh, it was? Oh, I thought it was Chick Hearns. Pardon me, sir. Christopher, you had another question?
What was there ever going to be a follow-up with Corn Ugly Dog with regards to any possible romance between Gary and Rachel, Pops' daughter, or between the time of Corn Ugly and Crisscross?
Not that we had planned. You know, you've done a lot more thinking about these stories and going over them than us. You have to remember, we wrote them. We were in production. It took us 3 weeks to write a story. We got network notes, another week and a half rewriting. Then it was to animatic and then animated, and boom, we were on to the next. You've even gone to addresses we'd put in the show that you found locations. It's insane. It's incredible what you've done. But we didn't put in the kind of thinking you've put in. You got to know that.
Mr. Small, I do want to ask you, aside from being like a very creative and comic genius, you were also a voice provider for the show, right? Like you also have done many characters. Now, confirm this too, sir. You did Veronica Baxter in the episode. What was it called? What was that episode called, Christopher? It was
The Scene.
The Scene.
Yes, I did play her. That was the voice I used. I've been doing an old lady voice for years.
In fact, I have a prank phone call I made when I was 8, and I actually was doing that character when I was 8 years old. I would call people and say that I'm a librarian from the Beverly Hills Library, and they have 3 books out, and they haven't been returned, so you owe us $200. And I would do that voice. So that voice is a part of my life. I've been doing her all my life.
Now you did that voice also too in the episode Dawn of the New Millennium as the voice of Calvin's wife. He goes, "Now where are we gonna do the nasty?"
Exactly. And my dad's in that in that episode, as is my niece. My niece plays the girl that screams when the rabbit is killed.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
No, wait, who did your you said your dad was in the show, right?
He also, yeah, he was the old man who was having the conniption in the when Razor Cat is playing.
I see. And speaking of that episode, you also did the voice of Trapper, didn't you?
I did.
You're definitely a one of a kind, sir.
I'll blow his kneecaps out.
I love that voice, man. It's bringing me back. I feel like I'm 11 again. Did with the last Christopher, did you have any additional Gary and Mike questions?
Well, since we have a little bit of time left.
Yeah, we have time.
Adam, was there like any thought into like what could have actually happened to Trapper Jack, after or he just like got away with torching Gary's ride? Was he like supposed to like, I don't know, head over to the Cayman Islands and retire with his buddies or something like that, or
maybe he became president of the United States. We have no idea where Trapper went. No idea.
Trapper for president. But Adam, I do want to say also that I absolutely thought it was very cool that, I was telling Christopher this earlier, that you got 2 of the biggest fathers on 2 of the biggest Fox shows in history. You got the guy, Bryan Cranston, to do Sergeant Major Clark Newton Sr., correct?
Yes.
And you also got, from that 70s show, Kurtwood Smith.
Kurtwood Smith.
I thought that was really cool to have 2 biggest dads on the 2 biggest Fox shows on one show.
Well, before I got in Living Color, I went to the Fringe Festival in Scotland, and we did a late night review called The Stephen Weed Show. It was about the 70s. Now, I don't know if you know who Stephen Weed is. Do you know who Patty Hearst is?
I've heard of Patty Hearst. Yeah, she's actually in a lot of John Waters movies.
Yeah, Patty Hearst was kidnapped and ended up becoming brainwashed from the Symbionese Liberation Army, and she ended up robbing banks. It was huge in the 70s. Anyways, Stephen Weed was her boyfriend. And when they kidnapped Patty Hearst, he was in the house with her, and instead of protecting his girlfriend, he ran out the back door and escaped. So that's why the show is called The Stephen Weed Show, because that pretty much sums up the 70s. It was a pretty shitty decade. So anyways, I co-starred with that, with Bryan Cranston, and did that show for 8 months with him. So we became really good friends, and we still are to this day. So that's why he was nice enough to do Gary and Mike.
Very cool. And can I ask too, sir, that for the working on the Gary and Mike though, there's so many questions I have to ask. I'm sorry, I'm just jittering because it's like I feel like I'm 11 again talking to you, sir. Like because you gave me so much memories like as a kid watching Gary and Mike, January from April 2001. One of my questions I got to ask though is, did uh, did Bryan Cranston play other characters on the show, or was it just Sergeant Major Clark?
Did he played the political one? I think Senator Bilson.
Wilson? Okay.
Yeah, that was Wilson.
Yeah, so he played him as well. He was great in that part.
He was. Chris, you have another question?
Well, I guess since we didn't really get around to asking this question, didn't know if we would have the time. Well, what was the general idea in like the development of Gary and Mike, and how it came about as a overall idea?
Yeah, we just thought a couple of kids traveling across the country, running into different adventures was something people would love.
I loved it.
And it was cool. It was eye candy, going to Vegas, going to Hollywood, going to New York. It was a blast. Unfortunately, you know, you hear stories about Family Guy and how the show was canceled, but the DVDs took off and it became a huge hit. Well, we were on UPN, then we were canceled, then we were on Comedy Central, and it didn't catch on. So we at least had two chances. But, you know, unfortunately it didn't catch on, but we would have loved to have done that show for 30 years.
And I'm doing all I can, and I'd like to think Pete here is too, that we're pretty much just trying to give it the recognition it deserves, because it was one of the best, man.
Yes.
You did great work.
Thank you.
And Adam, I had last week I had Dan Milano, who created Greg the Bunny, on the show last week. I was telling him how there was 3 shows that were so criminally underrated that, you know, that it sucked that they only had a short term, like, and that was, I put it top 3. That's Gary and Mike, Greg the Bunny, and The Critic. Those 3 shows were such great shows, and it's unfortunate they had a short run.
Yep, it's hit and miss. You never know what's going to stick.
I'll never forget too, sir, that one scene in New York, where Gary is in the restroom and you see the little eye going, "Hey, what you doing? Pooping?"
And that's me.
That's you too.
Yeah.
This is why you are a legend, sir.
Well, by the way, that's what I do when I go into a bathroom. Even before COVID, I didn't touch anything. I would take napkins, I would open doors, the whole thing. So that was basically an experience out of my life. I just didn't want to sit or touch anything. Oh.
Now I always wanted, before Chris, you get another question. I just want to ask too, sir. I always wondered this as a kid, though. Obviously, we know it's stop motion. Gary and Mike is stop motion, but to make Gary and Mike, was it clay? Like, take me to, like, you know, like the budget of making the characters and like the props of the show and the scenery. Take me there, sir.
So they made, I think there were probably 20 Garys and 20 Mikes. And you'd go to the soundstage in Seattle in Will Vinton's studio, and there would be 50 very small stages. Like, I'd say each stage was about this big. And so we'd have 5 of the same set and shooting a different 3 seconds from that scene. So there'd be 10 Garys working in different stages of a move, of a walking, 10 other, and so there were 50 different stages going at the same time. It was the first time they ever had the still shots going to a mainframe. So it was all digital. And it was just incredible. The characters were not clay, but they had joints and they moved, but they weren't moldable clay. They were solid. Then the mouths were put on. The mouths were replaceable. So you just get different mouth formation to get the different words. And they were incredible. You know, it would take, you know, a whole day to do maybe a second and a half of motion. And then the set designer came up with a really cool look, which was the sets were pictures of things. So if you were in a kitchen, it was a picture of a refrigerator. It was a picture of windows. So it was all photographs of pieces put into the sets. I thought it looked amazing.
Very cool.
And it worked very well.
It did.
Yeah. I mean, and also the computer work. That moment in I can't remember the name.
Was it Fish Fry?
It was the cult one.
Oh, what was it called? The Cult, right?
It was cult status.
Cult Status.
Yeah, with Dick Van Patten played the head. But that moment in the car when they fall asleep, is that in that when they're
Yeah, it's
hypnotized?
like in the very beginning.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a prologue, sort of, but it's the
Yeah.
only episode that has that.
They get hypnotized, fall asleep, and then they cause the accident in the back. I mean, it was just so brilliantly realized. And by the way, the hypnotist on the radio was Deborah Wilson from Mad TV.
Recognize her.
Yep. Because you had so many like regulars on the show. You had Deborah Wilson, you had Candy Milo, you had Kevin Michael Richardson, all great voice actors and actresses. I
Yeah.
mean, this is why Gary and Mike was definitely not only underrated, but definitely a one of a kind and one of my top 5 favorite shows of all time. You created something very special, Mr. Small,
Thank you.
in 2001. I do want to know if, and also I love like I mentioned Mr. Milano last week on my show. Like they had Muppets had something called Whatnuts, where you would not recycle character, but you would take the same sprint or like a design, and you would just redesign them. I noticed that in Gary and Mike too. Like there's some characters that are very similar. Like the guy in the scene who's chasing Gary and Mike, saying Lucy is dead, is the same guy, has the same design as the pizzeria guy in New York, New York.
Well, it was a budget situation. We couldn't create all these different characters, so we just take the same basic skeleton and either throw a mustache on him or a different hat. That was all budget wise. We just, we couldn't spend that much money.
I see. And definitely confirm this too, sir. Was the Cult Status episode with Comet Hasselhoff with Ba, was that like a parody of Heaven's Gate, right?
Yes.
Well, I have one final question about Gary and Mike before we wrap up our questions. Who was your favorite guest star on the show? Because you had many guest stars, including the late great Joni Lore China on Gary and Mike. Who was your personal favorite?
Tim Curry was really cool and couldn't have been nicer. He was really awesome to work with. He was really great. I mean, they were all great, but like Kurtwood Smith, he is amazing. And Cranston. I mean, and the way we would do it is we wouldn't have them come in individually. If there was a scene between 2 or 3 people, we'd have them all around the mic. So it was real dialogue, real conversations happening. So they were working off each other as opposed to you come in, do your lines, the next person will come in and do theirs. They were all live talking to each other in the room. It was fantastic.
Very cool. Chris, you have any final questions?
Well, Adam, since you definitely you are indeed a man living in the present, what's been some of your most recent projects that you've been working on?
Did a project for Disney Channel called Walk the Prank. It's a kid show, but it's about a group of kids that have a prank channel and they prank adults. And they're real pranks. And these kids are really pranking babysitters. And it is some of the most insane, dark, amazing stuff ever. And it's real. And I'm very proud of it. It was on for 3 seasons. Just crazy. We made an adult think that a person that she had met 5 minutes ago ceased to exist. Just think about that for a minute. We really made someone. Can I set this up for you?
Sure.
Sure, go.
So babysitter comes in. There's 3 kids and a dad. And the 3 kids say hello, and it's Bill, Steve, and Herman. And in the living room is a big magic box. You know, one of those disappearing boxes with the trap door underneath?
Yeah.
And the dad says, we just moved in, and an old magician used to live here, and he left some of his old plans downstairs. So the kids asked if I'd build this, and I'm a carpenter, so I built a box of this. So if the kids want to play disappearing games, let them. So now the dad leaves, and you look in the living room, and there are portraits of all the family with Herman, 3 kids and the mom and dad, and they're all over. Now the kid takes the babysitter and says, can I show you something really cool? Babysitter says, sure. We go upstairs into the kid's bedroom. And he says, what I didn't show my dad is that this magician was into black magic. Can I show you some of these spells? And there's all this incoherent gobbledygook, like blah, scabik, blah, blah, blah. He says, you want to come play disappear with us? So the babysitter says, okay. So remember, we're upstairs in the kid's bedroom. Now we come downstairs and we start, the kid goes into the box and the brother says, abracadabra, boom, flash. They open the box, he's gone. Okay, now it's like, let's bring him back. And he reads this chant, the black magic chant, and suddenly another flash and the kid's gone. He doesn't come back. So where's the kid? They open the trap door, he's not there. Now the brother says, he's probably hidden outside. So let's go look for him. So while the babysitter is outside, we remove the box. We change every picture with an identical picture, but without Herman in it. We change the bedroom into a library. And when the babysitter comes back, we look at what the chant was, we interpret what the chant was, and that it was, you will cease to exist. So now this person is like, where's Herman? And now the brother says, who's Herman? And nobody knows who Herman is. And there's no picture of Herman. And she goes, well, he was upstairs in his bedroom. We go upstairs in the bedroom and now it's a library. And now this babysitter is insane. Now dad comes home and she says, where's Herman? And he goes, there's no Herman. And we actually made this babysitter think that Herman ceased to exist. We broke her brain. So we did these amazing, insane pranks. You should look up some of them. They're on YouTube. Walk the Prank. Crazy stuff.
I'm definitely looking that up. Now,
I have to myself, man.
I definitely do. Now, Mr. Small, sir, because it's open forum, this is the part where my guests can talk about anything they want. They can talk about anything. The floor is yours, sir.
Well, I just appreciate you guys being fans. You know, when it was canceled, it's very depressing. It was 3 years of our life, just huge investment of time and energy. And when it dies, it's really like a family member dies. So the fact that you guys are out there keeping it alive is awesome. And I've enjoyed looking at the page and seeing references and hearing other people who are crew on the show talk about it. So I just appreciate you guys keeping this child of ours alive.
That means a lot, man.
Absolutely. Now,
You guys deserved a second season, a third even. Hell, as
Thank
many
you.
as you could. As soon as damn material ran stale.
I wish we could have kept going.
I agree. Now, Christopher, do you have any final words for Mr. Small in general, like before we conclude this wonderful, awesome interview?
Mr. Small, I definitely appreciate the memories that you gave me, and also your overall just correspondence that we've had within these past 3 years, and just being able to speak with you, present yourself as such an approachable guy.
Appreciate it. You know, it would have been fun, Gary and Mike traveling across the country during COVID.
That would be cool. Yeah.
I've often had this vision in that at some point they would have actually, I don't know, conceived their own 2 sons, and it would be like Gary Newton III and Mike Jr. And they would actually be like, I don't know, the young Gary and Mike, as it were, to relate to the current generation of Zoomers, I guess.
Yeah, I think they would have started in Wuhan, China, flown back to America, and infected about 500,000 people.
Now, Mr. Small, let me just say that, thank you for, hold on. Thank you for not only being on the show. Thank you for not only doing this interview, but thank you again for those childhood memories you gave me watching Gary and Mike. And this is going to be a fun treat to say, but, Gary and Mike debuted January 2001. My birthday is in January, so this was a nice treat to get Gary and Mike to watch something. You gave me an alternative to watch aside from WWF SmackDown at the time. As an 11-year-old boy, I'm watching every day with my father and my sisters, Gary and Mike. And it's such an honor interviewing you, sir. It's a true honor.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, sir. And also, like, if there's ever a Hall of Fame, like with writers or producers, I would lobby for you to be in it. I nominate you.
Well, I nominate you to be the nominator.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, sir.
Appreciate you
All
being
right.
on here, man.
Okay. Bye-bye.